Hello, everybody. Welcome into Tiger Talks Wrestling. I am your host, Tony, of course. Here joined by the boss himself, Eddie. Welcome into the show, my friend.
Hey, thank you so much. And the only thing I got to say about that opening entrance, it's SummerSlam live from Madison Square Garden. Be there or watch it on closed circuit TV.
It's a happening, don't you know?
Oh, it's a happening. Oh, my God. Oh. Ladies and gentlemen.
Gorilla Monsoon said that so many times during SummerSlam.
Most definitely. Ladies and gentlemen, first of all, I want to give it up to our host, the Tony Schiavone of my life, and me being the Gorilla Monsoon, and our very own Harvey Whippleman, who's not here right now. Johnny, we miss you. We miss you know. I just want to say thank you because you're bringing back a lot of memories of a 7-year-old final boss, Eddie Jankowski, going to the first SummerSlam with his mother. And I just want to say thank you because I miss the memories, and I want to say thank you to you for that.
Hey, you're welcome. It's something that's breathing new life, I feel like, into this channel. So
yeah,
I know you're getting all emotional there, Eddie, and I don't blame you. I know how much it means to you.
It does,
but
and
it's something that was much needed attention.
Yeah, and it does, and being a kid from New York and being a big World Wrestling Federation fan, and plus see how hard your mother worked to get tickets for the first inaugural SummerSlam, it brings a. I'm sorry, people. I'm sorry, I'm very emotional, but it brings a joy to me that I have friends like Tony that is not just reliving my childhood, but it's also, and I know it's going to sound quirky, but you're also remembering my mother. And I want to say thank you.
You're welcome. It's helpful for the channel too, and I don't mind helping out people no matter what the case may be. So
yeah.
But yes, we are here today for our first part of our 3-part series in this SummerSlam retrospective. We sat back and we're looking at it. We were thinking, how many SummerSlams has there been? And we decided, unlike with WrestleMania, where we were going to do it all in one for 40 years and ended up doing 2, we decided we were going to do 3 as we get a thumbs up from Eddie. Not even trying to, what you did, but anyway. So there has been more than 36. There's been 37 editions of SummerSlam. So we'll have 12 episodes we're going to discuss tonight. Next week, there'll be 12. And then the final week and 2 weeks from now, we'll be discussing 13 SummerSlams before we get to this year's SummerSlam, which, of course, will be in Cleveland, Ohio on August the 3rd. So I was telling you before we went on the air, I'll mention it now. I kind of went down memory lane between last night and today, and I was rewatching the first 4 episodes, or first 4 editions, if you will, of SummerSlam. Quite interesting takes I'm going to have concerning each one of these SummerSlams after rewatching them for the first time in quite a while. But let's jump right into it. And let's discuss SummerSlam 1988, the very first edition of SummerSlam. This was after WrestleMania, of course, had debuted 3 years earlier. Survivor Series was already a Thanksgiving Day tradition for a year, I think, at that point. And SummerSlam was the new one coming in. Happy, if you will, pay-per-view television circuit, Mega Powers, Mega Bucks, we'll get into later because that was the main event, of course. 20,000 people filled Madison Square Garden for this show. A show that would kick off with the Rougeau brothers. Jacques and Raymond Rougeau, or Raymond, as they were pretty much referring to him as, going up against the team of the British Bulldogs, Davey Boy Smith, the British Bulldog, and of course Dynamite Kid with Matilda. This is a pretty decent tag team match, I felt like, to kick off the show, but the only main problem I had with it was that it went to a 20-minute time limit. And then, of course, the Bulldogs wanted it to go further, but the Rougeaus.
Let me say this: watching that match live in the Garden, a 7-year-old kid had to sit through a 20-minute match and not get up. It was horrible. It was horrible. You know, believe me, it was horrible. The seats in Madison Square Garden back in the day weren't the comfiest seats like they are now. We had third row, and sitting there.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, we had third row because of thanks of Hogan. You know, because it was one of my birthday gifts from Hogan. Any time that a pay-per-view or a live event came, I wrote to Hogan and he sent me tickets, he sent me a t-shirt, and then I went backstage to meet him. Like, I haven't met Hogan after WrestleMania 4, after WrestleMania 3. But it was nice to meet the fellas and see them again. But and back in the day, they used to let you smoke in Madison Square Garden. So my mother and me had to sit next to a jackass that was smoking a cigar. And my mother said, if you don't put that away, I'm going to stick it in your ear.
I bet she was serious, too.
Oh, yes. New Yorkers, we don't play around.
I know about her.
We don't play around.
Right.
Good match, back and forth match. But I've always felt like back in the 80s, and you know this even with Crockett promotion, every tag team match had to go the distance, and then we never got a winner. And everybody knew what happened after this match that wasn't on TV, that the Dynamite Kid punched Jock in the mouth with a bunch of quarters and knocked out his teeth. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yep, this was after SummerSlam, after the event, and the Dynamite Kid punched him in the face, and this is the part of the documentary too about the Dynamite Kid, but yeah, Dynamite Kid was a loose cannon. I mean, he played jokes, but if you mess with him, so that's why SummerSlam Survivor Series 88 was his last Survivor Series.
Oh, that's good to know.
Yep.
I wondered whatever happened, why the Bulldogs kind of disbanded suddenly, but
yeah, it was all.
We don't want to spend too much time on just one match. There's 10 matches.
No, that's fine. Let's move on.
Go ahead. No offense, but we can do Dynamite Kid stuff later.
Yeah.
I'm not going to talk a whole lot about all these matches. I mean, the next match was Bad News Brown versus Ken Patera, and Ken Patera was kind of like I think we talked about this at our King of the Ring show. Ken Patera was kind of like the Kurt Angle of the 80s, but because he was an Olympic gold medalist, he was built even better, I think, than Kurt Angle personally, stronger and stuff, but he definitely could not hold a candle to Kurt Angle when it comes to in-ring competition.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Because that match between him and Bad News Brown was just horrible, in my opinion. From there, we'd have Ravishing Rick Rude go up against the Junkyard Dog, which ended in a disqualification when Jake Roberts came out and attacked Rick Rude after Rude had pulled down his pants to reveal that he had other pants on with Jake's then wife's face on them. Classic Ravishing Rick Rude. I'll get more into that as we get through these matches because there's something that kind of irked me about that, but Jake would get a little bit of revenge, so as to speak, on Rick, but didn't get too much of him. We go from that to the Powers of Pain. Warlord and the Barbarian with the Baron would defeat the Bolsheviks with Slick. It was interesting to me. I didn't realize there was a point in time then that the Powers of Pain were actually good guys cheered by the crowd. I just remember the Powers of Pain mostly being heels and being booed by the fans. Personally.
Oh yeah, I mean when they came in, they were faces, and then at Survivor Series, it was the double turn. Demolition became the face, and the Powers of Pain became the heels, and I still can't figure that out because Demolition was the tag team champions at the time, so I can't figure out why Fuji left the tag team title. We'll get into that later. But yeah, that's where it got a little weird.
Yeah. But seeing the Powers of Pain and having the Baron, who exactly was the Baron? I mean, he was a guy that came out with kind of like a cloak type jacket on and covered his face up, it seemed like, as well. I didn't recognize him when I had seen it, and he looked so small, really, compared to the Powers of Pain.
Okay, so I'm going to say this. And I was there. I didn't even know who the hell he was.
I mean, he's not a small guy, but still.
No.
Take. I'm going to click on his name so it shows me who exactly he was. Because, like I said, this guy, I had no idea who he was. Then we'll get into that. Oh, that was okay. That's what I wondered if it was Baron Von or not.
Yeah,
that's exactly who it was.
That motherfucker's still
that name I do recognize. Just calling him the Baron and not really seeing his face. I wasn't sure if that's who it was or not.
That motherfucker's still alive.
I think he was. Surprisingly. All right. From there, the next match we go into, we got to talk about this one a little bit because of what it was at the time. The man walking into the match was at that point, longest reigning Intercontinental Champion of all time. Hadn't gone well over a year as champion. He was originally supposed to defend the Intercontinental Championship. I believe it was against Brutus.
Yep, it was
Robert Beefcake, but Beefcake had gotten taken out by Outlaw Ron Bass.
Yep, it was supposed to be Brutus the Barber Beefcake.
Yeah, he got taken out by Ron Bass with some nefarious means that they showed the videos of it, and of course, Censor put a big old X and says Censor over it as Brutus got busted open. So instead, Honky Tonk Man's going in here with a mystery opponent and keeps saying, well, you can give me anybody. I'm the greatest champion of all time. Nobody's ever going to take it from me. Mean Gene even tried telling him who his opponent was going to be, and Honky Tonk Man didn't want to hear it. So we get the introduction for Honky Tonk Man as he's in the ring first with the Mouth of the South with him. And then Howard Finkel says, and his opponent, and then shrugs because he has no idea who it's going to be. We wait about a minute, and then all of a sudden we hear a familiar riff as the Honky Tonk Man's opponent would be, of course, the Ultimate Warrior in what would be the shortest match on this card. 31 seconds as the Ultimate Warrior would plow his way through the Honky Tonk Man to end the longest reigning Intercontinental Championship reign of all time and become the new Intercontinental Champion after a big splash to the Honky Tonk Man. What do you remember of all that situation going on and seeing Warrior come out there and demolish the Honky Tonk Man in such a short time?
First of all, it was loud as hell. When the Warriors music hit, that place, my seat shook. That
Nice.
place erupted. But here's another fact that nobody knows about. The Daily News had a spread that same day, and in the Intercontinental Championship spread, it had a picture of the Honky Tonk Man and Brutus the Barber Beefcake.
Yeah.
So it was like...
Of course, because that was the match it was supposed to be.
Yeah, and when we found... We didn't know nothing about it because everybody's like, wait, where's Brutus? And then the Warrior came out, won the Intercontinental title, but that place was loud. That place was loud and heavy, and I mean, yeah, it was just loud that you couldn't even hear yourself talk. You know, but it was I wish it was a longer match, but that's the Warrior matches back then. They were short.
Yeah, he was still kind of on the come up, if you will, in WWE at that point in time. I feel like he hadn't really been around too terribly long at that point. But to see something like that happen, like we said, Honky Tonk Man had been champion for well over a year. It was just, even watching it back now, it's just shocking to see a long title reign like that come to an end that quick and easy.
Yeah, it was.
Of course, we know now that title reign has been surpassed.
Definitely, because if you look at it now, Gunther broke that record, and it's amazing it took that long. When he lost it in '88, it took him that long. It took somebody that long to break that record. I mean, 666 days is no joke. What was the final count for the...
No.
Was it 666?
That was it for Gunther, yeah.
What was the count for Honky?
Let me see. I don't remember. I want to say it was in the 400s, but I won't swear to it without double checking here real quick. All right. Whoops. $454.
Wow.
So the ring general went over 200 days more. It lasted for 35 years.
That is amazing.
That is second longest reign in Intercontinental Championship history.
Yeah, that's.
He said to be beaten by the ring general Gunther, who now has it as 666 days. But yeah. So then the next match, we had a special guest ring announcer in the form of rugged Ronnie Garvin, who had been apparently, storyline wise, banned from being a referee and banned from being an in-ring competitor. But he came out there to be the special ring announcer. As we got The Rock, Don Morocco, going up against Dino Bravo with Frenchie Martin. And I got the wrong match here?
That was Greg Valentine's match.
No, I'm thinking
against Hercules.
Yeah, you're right. Sorry, Yep, I got the wrong match. Sorry. That's next.
It's all right. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I had to correct.
But anyways, we still got Dino Bravo and Rock Don Morocco.
Wait, where the hell is he going with this?
Hey. Going nowheres, yeah. Just erase that. We'll get back to that. When we get to 89. Anyways, Dino Bravo, Don Morocco, 5.5 minute match. Dino Bravo picks up the win. I believe Dino was kind of just getting his feet wet in WWF at the time, from what it seemed like.
Yeah, this is after he dropped. This is after he dropped Johnny Valiant as his manager and got Frenchie Martin. And then when Frenchie Martin left, that's when he got Jimmy Hart for the rest of his career.
Right. Again, it was just another okay match. I felt like a lot of matches were. From there, we go in. You got the Hart Foundation versus Demolition for the tag team titles. Probably one of the best matches, in my opinion, on this whole card was this match between the Hart Foundation and Demolition. A little bit of shenanigans at the end, of course. Jimmy Hart comes back out after he'd been chased out of the ring by the Anvil earlier on. Would use the megaphone to assist Demolition in retaining the tag team titles over the Hart Foundation. And we'd get Big Boss Man with Slick getting a victory over Coco Beware. So here's my issue. The next match was just before the main event. Jake the Snake Roberts going up against Hercules. And after you see Jake get involved in Rick Rude's match earlier, how come we don't get Rick Rude coming out here to try and cost Jake his match?
Poor booking by Vince McMahon.
Yeah, I guess so.
Let's talk about
Jake would go on to win this match, and you don't see.
Let's talk about this match for a minute. I felt that you had the feud with Jake Roberts and Rick Rude. Why them two didn't wrestle at SummerSlam makes no sense.
Right? It should have been a match there at SummerSlam instead of them getting their other opponents, Jake facing Hercules and Rick facing JYD.
Yeah.
I mean, we'd eventually get the match between Jake and Rude, but still, it seemed like SummerSlam would have been the best spot for it. So I agree with you.
Yeah.
That brings us to the main event, of course, the Mega Bucks versus the Mega Powers. To bring to a close, honestly, in my opinion, maybe one of the worst SummerSlams of all time, honestly, to me, after rewatching it again. Even this main event match, it was kind of the shits. Point blank, period. No offense to Savage.
No,
Andre.
no.
They can-
Telling that to a 7-year-old, me, I would have been like, "Who the hell are you?" You know.
right?
But
Big
since I'm
Hogan
an
fan.
since I'm an adult and now rewatch it, Andre was way too slow. Savage was selling it like he always does. The only good part about it is Miss Elizabeth taking off her bottom, and which was more,
Yep.
that was the only good part about it. And other than that, all the rest of it was just a clunky match that to finish off a SummerSlam that was okay.
That's being nice.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
I mean, I'm only doing it because Elizabeth took her bottoms off. That's the only reason I'm doing it.
Right?
I mean,
yeah, I don't like that one. But you would have thought. No, go ahead.
No, you first.
You would have thought this being the very first SummerSlam, they would have kind of treated it like they did the very first WrestleMania and would have wanted a bigger show than this, but obviously they weren't thinking that way. At least it didn't show like it did.
Yeah, and I do agree with you. I mean, wrestling back then was so like, we're just gonna put on a show and see how it goes. Now it's a big spectacular. They're just trying to fill seats. Other than that, it is what it is.
Yeah. Pretty much. That's all I can say about it. All right. Any final things you want to say about the 88 SummerSlam? We good to move on?
No, I'm good. I just still wish, and this is just something I wish. Hopefully next year in Vegas, we get Demolition in the WWE Hall of Fame.
That would be nice. It's well. That's for sure. Very much so, well overdue. All right. So we go from New York City's Madison Square Garden to East Rutherford, New Jersey, as we head to SummerSlam 1989, a year later. Dates August 28th, 1989, the Meadowlands Arena, another 20,000 people as we feel the heat. You get Tony Schiavone and Jesse the Body Ventura on commentary this year after Gorilla Monsoon and Superstar Billy Graham did the commentary for SummerSlam 88. I would say, even from the start, the first match on this card, not counting the pre-show match, obviously, because we didn't see that, but the first match on the card, I felt like kicked things off in a much better way than anything you've seen on SummerSlam 88. Even without going into detail of what that match was right off the get, but the match was, of course, to lead off SummerSlam 89, the Hart Foundation, Bret the Hitman Hart and Jim the Anvil Neidhart, going up against the new, at that point in time, WWF Tag Team Champions, Arn Anderson, Double A, and Tully Blanchard, of course, managed by the Mouth of the South, Jimmy Hart, or Bobby Heenan, sorry, not the Mouth of the South, by Bobby the Brain Heenan. The only thing I didn't understand, and I mean, they brought it up on commentary here, even though they had just won the tag team titles, why wouldn't you want to put the tag team titles on the line here? I get that they had signed the contract before the title match and before the Brainbusters had won the tag titles, but still, wouldn't you want to be fighting champions?
Can I go off on that? On that what you just said?
Yeah.
Let me tell you how Vince
course.
worked. Let me tell you how Vince worked back then. Saturday Night Main Event was taped in advance, and the tag team champions at the end, when this match was signed, was Demolition. So when that aired a week before SummerSlam, the Brainbusters got the tag team titles. Vince never liked it to put titles that a team had maybe a month after. He always tried to keep it like, okay, they just won the tag team titles. We can't do nothing about it. He always tried to protect that side of the business, which I always thought, like, put him on the line. I agree with you. Put him on the line. It made no sense, but that's what he did it.
Yeah, especially when out of everything that happened, we get the Brainbusters pick up the win anyway. So it's like, why didn't you have them put tag titles on the line then?
No, I agree with you.
I could see if you're going to have the Hart Foundation win the match, not putting the titles on the line. But...
Hold on. No, I agree with you. I thought Vince should have put the tag team titles because it was a week before it. So, but he did what he did. He was a jackass and he did it what he wanted to.
Yeah, pretty much. All right, so we go from there. We got the Honky Tonk Man with the Mouse of the South, Jimmy Hart, in his corner, going up against the American Dream, baby, Dusty Rhodes. Wasn't as good as a tag team match for it, obviously, but still a decent match there. You got to see good things from the Dream, as this was one of the first major times you've seen the Dream in WWF. I loved how Tony Schiavone even brought up the points of Dusty wearing the polka dots and still dancing around and all that other stuff that they would poke fun at nowadays from what Dusty's character had to go through back then.
Oh, the polka dots. I mean, yeah. No.
Dusty made it work. That's all you can say about that.
To me, it looked like a clown, but Dusty didn't give a shit. Dusty's like, I'm doing it for the fan, baby. You know.
Right. It was nice to see. Unfortunately for Honky Tonk Man, he went 0-2 at SummerSlam, as he would take the loss to the American Dream. But nice to see the Dream get a big win at SummerSlam. And we get the Red Rooster, of course, Terry Taylor, for those of people that know him as Terry Taylor and don't know who Red Rooster is, would go up against Mr. Perfect, a.k.a. Kurt Hennig, in a very short match, kind of a messy match at points. But the best part of it was Mr. Perfect doing perfect things at points, and that perfect plex at the end. Chef's kiss, because that was great. It was perfect, if you will. From there, you got a 6-man tag match, building off of what happened at WrestleMania, because we had the end of Strike Force at WrestleMania that year. And this match kind of came off of the heels of that, because you got Rick Martel on one side in the 6-man tag. You got his former partner, Tito, or Chico Santana, as Jesse the Body would call him, and the other side of the corner, the other side of the ring. Joining Rick Martel was the Rougeau brothers. Joining Tito was the Rockers. a pretty decent back and forth 6-man tag team match here. The end was a bit of a cluster, though. You've seen everybody get involved, but I'm not even sure the correct legal men were involved in the pinfall at the end of it.
Yeah, definitely.
Of course, Rick Martel and the Rougeaus won. This was before, really, Rick Martel started the model character, though, which was quite interesting to see him kind of in between the two characters of with Strike Force and before he was the model. All right. From there, we go on to another match that was built off of WrestleMania as we got the rematch for the Intercontinental Championship from WrestleMania. Ravishing Rick Rude defended against the Ultimate Warrior. Honestly, I felt like this was a really good rematch that these two men put on at SummerSlam and might have been one of the best matches on this entire card. Probably one of the best matches, in my opinion, of Warrior's career, honestly.
You know, shit, yeah.
Up until the end.
Yeah, because Warriors matches were a little clunky. I mean, Rick Rude made him look like $1 million.
He did. On more than one occasion.
Yeah.
But, of course, at the end of the match, Rowdy Roddy Piper would make his return, who had been having issues with Rick Rude prior. And he would cost a distraction, leading to the Warrior picking up the win over Rick Rude to win back the Intercontinental Championship. Because Piper supposedly mooned Rick Rude because he flashed the backside of his kilt, pulling it up at Rude, and Rude did not like that at all. Took a belly-to-back suplex off the second rope from Warrior, leading into the big splash eventually from the Warrior to get the win.
Just a side note, Roddy Piper has the skinniest ass in the world. I mean,
well,
I was at this event live, and a part of me died that night. Love Piper, but I didn't want to see his ass, so let's just go from there.
All right, we can. So from there, we got Andre the Giant teaming up with the Twin Towers, Akeem and the Big Boss Man in a 6-man tag against King Hacksaw Jim Duggan, or Demolition Hacksaw Jim Duggan, whichever you want to call him, teaming up with Demolition's Axe and Smash. Kind of a shortish 6-man tag, little over 7 minutes. The only thing memorable really from the match is the ending of it, in my opinion. Hacksaw with the 2x4 that was dressed up with a American flag on it pretty much, and a little crown as well. Using that to smash with it, I think it was who it was. Leading into the pinfall victory for Hacksaw, or not Smash, sorry. Smash was his partner. Akeem, I think, was who it was that he smashed with it, the 2x4. But to pick up the win for Hacksaw in Demolition. Andre, you could tell, even looking at this match, he wasn't in there that much. And when he was, like you said, from 88, clunky, moving kind of slowly. You could tell his in-ring career was pretty much coming to an end.
Yeah, the saddest part about Andre, guy had back surgery, came back, looked fabulous, and then from there he couldn't stop growing, and then you saw it. Like, I felt bad for him because I love Andre. I just felt like they could have did something else from him. That's why they had, for most of his career in WWE after this, he was in tag matches because he couldn't move around.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I remember him and Haku spent quite a while as a tag team.
Yeah, the Colossal
this,
Connection.
so. Yes. Maybe a misjustice that they were. I don't believe they ever were tag team champions, but
what, the Colossal
neither here nor there. They were tag team champions at one point, weren't they?
Yeah, they won it right before WrestleMania 6, and then lost it to Demolition.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, I forgot about that. But yes, I remember now that you mentioned it. Shame they didn't have a longer title reign. Put it that way.
Yeah. Hey, I got your back with the history of World Wrestling Federation. I got your back.
Good. Somebody's got to keep me in check sometimes.
No, it's okay.
All right. Going from there, now is where I was going earlier, when we'd have the special guest ring announcer, Rugged Ronnie Garvin, as we'd have Greg the Hammer Valentine with Jimmy Hart in his corner, going up against the mighty Hercules. Man, Hercules has always been jacked. Let me put that out there first and foremost. But again, as I mentioned, Rugged Ronnie Garvin had been banned from being a wrestler, been banned from being a referee, but he got to be a commentator here. A decent match between Hercules and Greg the Hammer. At the end of it, you see Greg get the roll up, put his feet on the ropes, get the 1, 2, 3. The funny part was Rugged Ronnie Garvin comes in the ring to do the announcement. The winner of the match is Hercules, he says, which of course infuriates the Hammer. And the referee saying, no, that's not who won the match. So then Rugged Ronnie Garvin corrects himself and says the winner due to disqualification is Hercules, which again infuriates the Hammer and eventually leads to a brawl. Hammer knocks Garvin out of the ring, gets into it with Hercules. Garvin gets back in and gets one shot on Greg the Hammer. The Hammer might not have never been announced as the winner, but he did technically win this match.
Oh, yeah.
Because it was more so, it seemed to further that rivalry.
I still think, and this is just me, I think Ronnie Garvin in WWF, I wish they would have did more with him than what they did with him. Because and I didn't know this, that his brother is a Freebird. Jimmy Jam Garvin.
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't realize that either. But
yeah,
but yeah, they should have done more with him there.
I was like, you have a Freebird family member. The hell are you not using him correctly?
Right?
Alexa, light off the living room.
They definitely should have done more with Ronnie.
Alexa, light off the living room.
Okay.
But
anyway, we'll digress and move on from that.
Sign note from Ronnie Garvin, the Garvin Stomp. The Garvin Stomp has been used by Randy Orton.
Oh, Ronnie Garvin used that first?
Yeah.
I know they called it the Garvin Stomp before, but
yep.
I might have to watch some of Ronnie Garvin's match in that.
Yeah.
Interesting. That's why he's the brain. Oh. So then we go on from that match. You get the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase, with Virgil in his corner. Hey, there it is. It was a little delayed. Going up against Superfly, Jimmy Snuka. Really a throwaway match, in my opinion. Leads to a count-out victory for Ted DiBiase as Virgil got involved. Virgil would then eat the Superfly splash after the match. At that point in time, really Superfly was kind of at the end of his career, I would say, more so than anything else. He wasn't seen that often, honestly, at that point in time in WWE, WWF programming. But I think I almost felt like they just wanted to give him a moment to do that Superfly splash back in close to the New York area, where he, of course, hit the huge Superfly splash off the steel cage. But yeah, you could definitely tell Superfly's best years, in my opinion, when you look at this match, were behind him, because him and DiBiase had. You would have thought they would have had a better match than what they with those two names.
Oh yes, I agree with you, and everybody remembers that cage match with Don Naranjo at Madison Square Garden. Snuka diving off the top cage, and a young Mick Foley was in attendance. That he hitchhiked to Madison Square Garden to see his idol Jimmy Snuka win the Intercontinental Championship from Don Naranjo and his manager, the Master for One, my favorite, Mr. Fuji.
Yes. It's not ready to bring up. All right. Like I said, you could definitely tell. You would have thought those two guys would put on better matches because we know they could do better than what they did there. Maybe it was partially because of the time they had, but who knows? That brings us to the main event. You get Hulk Hogan in the main event again, and so is Randy Savage, this time on opposing teams. As you got the Immortal Hulk Hogan and Brutus the Barber Beefcake teaming up to go against the Macho Man Randy Savage and Zeus, with Sensational Sherry, of course, in their corner. Go ahead.
No, I'm just doing the Macho Man thing.
You're just doing the Macho. Gotcha. Yeah, I got you. Macho Man was in there for the most part for his team, of course. Zeus no-sold pretty much everything until the end of the match. Hogan eventually slammed and hit the leg drop on Zeus to get the win. Again, just like in '88, this was kind of a clusterfuck and just wasn't that great of a main event, in my opinion.
You know what? I am actually going to agree with you with this because this was on the heels of Macho Man Randy Savage becoming the Macho King. Oh, yeah. And you have to work with Zeus.
Right.
I forgot what his name is. Tiny. This is all
Tiny
done.
Lister.
Yeah. This was all done to promote the movie No Holds Barred. This is what it was. It was just promote the movie No Holds Barred that I watched 26 times.
I've seen it maybe once.
Yeah. And then this feud was not over until after Survivor Series when they had Randy Savage and Zeus against Brutus and Hogan in a steel cage match. The movie, the cage match. Nobody gave a shit. It still sucked.
Right.
I want your opinion on this.
Yeah,
I want your opinion on this. I think the main event for this match, for this card, should have been the Ultimate Warrior versus Rick Rude.
Yes, I would agree. That was the best match, really, that took place on that card.
That or the Brain Busters against the Hart Foundation.
And nowadays, right, one or the other. But no, I would have went with Rude and Warrior. Nowadays, I feel like, yes, Hogan was the WWF champion going into that match. That's the only reason Vince had it as an event, I feel like, because it's Hogan. But nowadays, I feel like if you had the champion in I don't know if I can say that though, because we just had a premium live event, it's they're called now, where the champion was in a multi-person match that main evented a show. But I just feel like if it would have been that quality type of a match nowadays, that would have been pushed down the card and had something else main evented. But who knows? I agree it should have been, though. The only interesting thing that happened was what happened kind of after the match, where Elizabeth and Brutus managed to cut off the braids of Sensational Sherry after Hogan did an atomic drop to her, and Elizabeth smacked her with the loaded purse. But still, that couldn't even save that main event.
Yeah.
All right. Any final thoughts on the 1989 SummerSlam?
No,
Better than 88, but still the main event.
I think we already covered what we thought about it.
Yeah. Right. Kind of two stinkers. Well, a stinker at least. And now let's move on. SummerSlam 1990. The Heat Returns was the tagline for it. Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. 19,304 people in the Spectrum would fill in the Spectrum. And we got on commentary. Whoops, I went past it, didn't I? Oh, those are the results for something else. Vincent Kennedy McMahon for the first time on SummerSlam, alongside Roddy Piper. And we kick off SummerSlam 1990, new generation. So I want to discuss this first. The first match, the dark match that you don't see on there, Buddy Rose, Playboy Buddy Rose would go up against Shane Douglas. I personally do not remember seeing Shane Douglas in WWF in 1990.
Actually, the only time he was there was only on house shows.
Okay, that would make more sense. Because the first time I remember really seeing Shane Douglas involved in WWF would be, I can't remember the exact year he came in, but it was as Dean Douglas.
Yeah. Yeah, because Douglas was new to it. I think this is before the. I really don't want to say this name because they were a crappy ass team. The Dynamic Dudes. Oh.
Yeah. Thank you, John. That says I know they will go very far. Keep doing what they are passionate about. A hug. Jonathan is a different guy that I'm a friend with. Know him quite well.
Yeah, I think this is Shane Douglas before. I think he only had a match at the Royal Rumble because he was in the 1990 Royal Rumble. But after that, he was just on house shows.
Okay. Yeah, I'd have to look back at that. So I don't even remember him being in the Rumble, but I can't remember everybody that was in the Royal Rumble every year. So
I don't.
It's very possible. All right, so we get to the main show. We get to the main show starting, and you have the Rockers coming out to the ring. You could see Shawn Michaels is clearly limping as they're heading to the ring, which we'll get into in a moment. As they get close to the ring, they get attacked by Power and Glory, of course, being Paul Roma and the Mighty Hercules. As this is pretty much one of the first times you see them as a tag team, I believe. Maybe they were at WrestleMania that year too, but this is one of their first big spots. They take out Shawn Michaels at the knee. Pretty much this match turned into a handicap match. What I read about it was Shawn apparently at a house show not too long before SummerSlam had gotten his knee injured, and he would have to go on after this match to have knee surgery. That'd keep him out of action only for like 2 months because he would return at Survivor Series. 3 months. It was what it was. We got to see Pride and Glory or Power and Glory pick up a win over the Rockers here, over Marty really. Afterwards, they would throw Sean in the ring, beat him down, go after that knee some more. Marty would eventually have to throw his body over Sean's leg to try and save it. But Sean gets the stretcher job out of the arena from that.
I gotta say, Shawn Michaels really knew how
I recall you mentioned you were.
I gotta say, Shawn Michaels really knew how to sell a leg injury when he was on that stretcher.
I know, right? It was definitely interesting to see. Maybe Sean shouldn't even have been out there in the first place, really, but since he knew he had to have surgery anyways. But I guess that's just a testament to the kind of person that Shawn Michaels was as a performer. And Marty did put up a decent fight, but again, it was 2-on-1. There's only so much you can do in that situation because Marty wasn't that big of a guy, and Roma and Hercules both were pretty jacked guys. What did you think of that tag team? Speaking of Power and Glory, I mean, we see a certain tag team in AEW that likes to use their finisher as one of their signature moves, not their finishing move. But all in all, what do you think when you think of Power and Glory? Is it a team that really goes down in memory for as one of the top teams back in the late 80s, early 90s? Did you cut out there a second?
Okay. To me, I always felt Paul Roma was better with who's that other guy? Paul Roman, God, what is his name? When he
I
was
thought he was decent. Paul Orndorff.
no. That one was a good team too. But I'm talking about his WWE run when he was a part of the Young Stallions.
With not Tito. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I can't think of what the Young Stallions was, who his partner was either. Now I'm gonna have to look this up.
Paul Roma and oh my God, I forgot his name.
I should be able to remember too, because it's a bigger name, I think.
He was in WCW and Teddy Long was his manager. Oh my God.
Jim Powers.
Yeah, there you go. I know it was something Jim, but I always felt like Paul Roma and Jim Powers were a better team than Hercules. Hercules was good, but Hercules wasn't a tag team specialist. I felt like I liked the Young Stallions better.
I could see that. They were a good tag team together, Jim Powers and Paul Roma.
Yeah. To me, it reminds me
of course,
and please don't take this wrong. When I see Power and Glory, I see fire and ice.
Oh, wow! I remember that team: Flash Norton and Ice Train.
Yeah. Let's just keep it there.
I get it though. All right. So from there we go into an Intercontinental Championship match. You got the Texas Tornado, Kerry Von Erich, who was newer to WWF at the time. Of course, big, huge name in Texas. Many people knew him, even in WCW at that point in time, whatever you wanted to call it back then. Had run there, NWA, I guess, technically. But he was kind of an unknown to WWF wise. He was newer. Mr. Perfect was undefeated in his WWF career up to this point. Those two names and knowing how they can go in a wrestling ring, if they would have been given more time, I feel like this probably would have been the match of the night. But this wasn't really that great of a match for these two. And yes, Texas Tornado did walk out as the new Intercontinental Champion, but it just felt like it was rushed. And even the finish seemed rushed to me, like it just came out of nowhere pretty much.
It did, and there's a correction with Mr. Perfect being undefeated at this time. Mr. Perfect lost his first
They
match
claimed
at
it.
Mr. Perfect lost his first match was at WrestleMania 6 against Brutus the Barber Beefcake.
Yeah, it's true. They still were claiming that he was undefeated, though.
Yeah, I
In the
know.
interview before the match.
Yeah. It was Bobby Heenan. Bobby Heenan always lies about anything.
That's true.
Yeah.
Weasel does. What did you think of the match overall? Besides, like I said, it just finish came out of nowhere. Just seemed to end quick.
You know, I'm going to agree with you with this one. I felt like it should have went longer because you got two great technical wrestlers and two legendary families.
Yes.
You'd think you would want
Right.
Well, I mean the Von Erichs against the Hennon family. I mean, come on, that is a no. May they both rest in peace. If you would have that match today, that shit would be a 5-star match, hands down.
I'd agree. Right. Yep. So from that, leave it at that. We go on from that match. You get the sensational Queen Sherry coming out to the ring, and she's supposed to have a match against Dusty Rhodes' valet at the time. Of course, the sweet Sapphire. She gets introduced three times, I believe. The music plays. No show. You don't get nobody coming out. Eventually, a producer, whoever comes out there, talks to the referee and Howard Finkel. They give her 30 seconds to come out to the ring, or she loses by forfeit. We get to 30, we get to 20. Fink gets to 10 and goes down to 9. Sherry takes the microphone, counts down from there to 1 to 0. Sherry wins by forfeit. Nobody knows where Sapphire is. She was seen earlier in the day. They knew that she was in the arena. We'd get more into that later. Sherry acts like she won a huge match, but you get a forfeit win. Craziness. We'll get into that more later. Tito Santana would have a match against the Warlord, as we see Warlord in singles action. Man, you sometimes forget, I mean, at least I did, until you watch back some of these matches, how big of a guy Warlord really was.
Standing next to him, and I was 9. Standing next to him, I felt like a peanut.
I bet. Because seeing him and Barbarian together as a tag team's one thing, but just seeing him even in a singles match. And Tito Santana, not a small guy, but Tito looked small next to the Warlord.
Most definitely. And that damn body armor he used to wear, the one with the face mask, one side, and that stupid ass body armor with that pitchfork. It's like, who the fuck dresses you?
Right? I am surprised when you know that Vince McMahon liked big guys like that back then. I am surprised Warlord never was really a top star in WWF back
then. Yeah, I give you one name: Hulk Hogan.
You're probably right. Because he had the look, I feel like, that Vince McMahon loved. So.
Yeah, I agree, but
Would have been a top heel easy.
When you have the immortal douchebag in charge of his own creation, that's when you know that that's when you know you're not going to get pushed.
Right. That's true. All right. So we go from there into a 2 out of 3 falls match for the WWF Tag Team Championships, as we got the Hart Foundation going up against 2/3 at that point in time of Demolition, or at least so we thought. We get Smash and Crush representing Demolition here. Very interesting 2 out of 3 falls match. We're going to go by falls here. The first fall comes to Demolition as they would hit the Demolition Destruction, or whatever you want to call the finish, onto the Hitman. Crush pins the Hitman 1, 2, 3. Eventually go into the second fall, which the Hart Foundation would hit the Heart Attack on Smash. And just as it looked like they're going to get a 3 count, Crush comes in there and tackles pretty much the referee, Earl Hebner. Picks him up and throws him around a little bit, which leads to a disqualification, of course, because you can't put your hands on an official. What was your take, as before I go too far into the third fall, because a lot happened for that third fall? What was your take sitting there as a 9-year-old kid watching as Demolition and the Hart Foundation are going at it in these first 2 falls?
I gotta say there was one hiccup I always felt needed to change. Great tag team, Demolition and the Hart Foundation. Great tag team. They're both hardworking teams. I always felt like it should have been Axe instead of Crush, because Crush was so green back then.
Yeah.
You know, I always felt like it should have been him, but I get the reason why Axe wasn't there. He was having back troubles. Vince promised him a position in the back in creative, and plus he was allergic to fish. I didn't plan that.
What's that got to do with anything?
Yeah.
I know.
But yeah, he was allergic to shellfish, and he blew up the night before. So that's why he wasn't in this match. Because you see when he came out, you saw when he came out, he was like deep red. He didn't know that he was allergic to fish.
Yeah. Huh. Explain that. Yeah, because if we go into this third fall, Axe would eventually come out to the ring. We'd hide under the ring for a little bit. I should say him and Smash would swap spots. If you're the referee in this match, how can you not tell the difference between Axe and Smash? I mean, their face paint's different. They're really, honestly, built differently. But Axe spent an okay amount of time in the ring as a legal competitor for Demolition, even though he wasn't technically supposed to be in this match, before eventually trading spots with Smash again. But it's just insane to me that they could get away with a switch like that with how much of a difference there is between those two.
Yeah. I mean, it's Earl Hebner. He still talks about the Montreal screw job. I mean, yeah.
That is very true. So all the commotion, eventually Axe is back outside the ring, and the Legion of Doom, of all people, come out to the ring and pull Axe out from under the ring. Smash takes his attention away from the match and tries to go out to help out Axe with the Legion of Doom on the outside, leading into a Crush going over to the other side of the ring. Jim the Anvil comes in with the flying shoulder tackle over the ropes, and Brett was right behind Crush, tripping him up. covers him, rolls him up pretty much with the 1, 2, 3. We get new tag team champions in the form of the Hart Foundation. A pretty decent 2 out of 3 falls match between these two teams. I can't say it was great because of the shenanigans and everything in it, but it was a decent match. It was an okay match. Leading into bigger things later. All right. From there, we get the Big Boss Man as a special guest referee, as you got Bad News Brown versus Jake the Snake Roberts. Bad News Brown supposedly had some sewer rats or something that they advertised, and supposedly was supposed to have one with him, I guess, but you never see it, and is deathly afraid of snakes. And of course, Jake's got Damien out there. This one was kind of screwed right from the get-go, because, I mean, the match started before Boss Man even got to the ring, so they had Boss Man come out third instead of first, like you normally would have the referee come out first. This match never really seemed to pick up steam to me, and it felt like there should have been disqualifications a lot sooner than when Boss Man eventually did disqualify Bad News Brown to give the win to Jake. After the match, Bad News tries to drop an elbow or a leg drop, whichever, on the Snake, but Boss Man moved the bag out of the way. It was just a mess. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, let's move on.
Out of that, I do want to mention that was the last you would see of Bad News Brown in WWF, because he did leave right after SummerSlam because he said there was some things he was promised and creative wise that they weren't giving to him, so he was done pretty much. And you can see why when you get stuck with shit like that.
I remember that he was promised to win. This is his own words. He was promised to win the World Wrestling Federation title from Hogan.
That's interesting. Instead, Warrior got it that year.
Yeah. And everybody knows that Bad News Brown came from Stampede Wrestling.
Yeah. All right. Good to know. Move on from that, you got the Orient Express of Sato and Tanaka with Mr. Fuji, of course, in their corner, going up against the newly formed team at that point of Nikolai Volkov, the USSR native that declared himself an American now, and even bring out the American flag, and Hacksaw Jim Duggan. This was, of course, same time that our troops had been sent over to Iraq for the first time, one of the first times. Iran, maybe it was then. Yeah, I think it was Iran, actually. They got sent to. Duggan and Volkov come out there, and they proceed to do America the Beautiful. Definitely not the best version of America the Beautiful I've ever heard. Let's put it that way. It was horrible. Hacksaw wishing well to all of our troops afterwards, which was a great moment. Throwaway match, really. Hacksaw picks up the win with the clothesline on Tanaka, I believe. And we'll move on from that because that's pretty much nothing else to talk about from that tag team match, in my opinion. And you get the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes versus Macho King Randy Savage with Sensational Queen Sherry. Before the match begins, out comes the $1 Million Man Ted DiBiase onto the podium with Virgil to let Dusty know that he has bought the services pretty much of Sapphire. He had been the one sending her all the gifts leading up to SummerSlam. Even gave her a car and all that, a bag full of money. And Dusty, of course, was not happy with Sapphire doing that, joining Ted DiBiase, but we'd get the clunker of a match between Savage and DiBiase, or Dusty, sorry. Very short match. Sherry eventually gives Savage her purse, and it to hit Dusty with it. The loaded purse, 1, 2, 3. Dusty tries chasing after DiBiase and Sapphire as they're leaving after the match. Couldn't catch him. That's all that was to that, pretty much. Dusty and Savage deserve better.
No, I agree. I mean, I felt like that match could have given,
especially when this was
2 minutes and 15 seconds. That's garbage for a Randy Savage match.
Yes, it was. Like I said, especially when this was supposed to be the end of that rivalry, because Dusty would move on from Savage to going into a rivalry with DiBiase afterwards. I think Savage and DiBiase were teammates at Survivor Series against Dusty and his team, but still the rivalry swapped from Savage to DiBiase at that point at SummerSlam.
Yes.
So they definitely deserve better. We go from that to, as we call him, the immortal douchebag, Hulk Hogan, with the big boss man in his corner going up against Earthquake with Jimmy Hart and Dino Bravo. I want your opinion on this. We had seen in the build-up to it, Earthquake would hit the Earthquake, as he called this finisher, on Hogan that took him out of action for a couple months, I guess. I'm sure just really to go do a show, a movie, or whatever. What was, well, I mean, as a 9-year-old kid, you probably were excited to see it happen, but looking back at it now, what do you think of Hogan getting hit with not one, but 2 earthquakes and then kicking out at 1 pretty much? Shoving off Earthquake.
Okay, I'm going to sound dorky. Yes, I did write letters to Hulk Hogan to make sure he was okay.
As many Hulkamaniacs did back then.
Yeah. And at the time at this event, Hulk Hogan was filming one of the greatest movies of all time with Dr. Brown, Suburban Commando.
Interesting.
Let's not talk about that garbage.
Yeah, let's not.
Woo! John Tenta, my God. Earthquake, John Tenta could have won this match. You know, he should have won this match to further the storyline, because what the hell was Hulk Hogan doing before this? Nothing. But Hogan had creative control,
right.
Had to win. Yeah, Hogan kicking out of the Earthquake splash. Yay. Back then, but I feel like they could have done more with this.
Yeah. It was terrible, really.
Yeah.
Watching back at it, it's like, really, Hogan kicked out of 2 earthquakes?
And
terrible.
the man couldn't even put somebody through a fucking table.
Right. That is true.
But I felt bad for John, for Earthquake. Did you see his back? Holy shit.
Yeah, I did. After the chair shots, yeah. Probably a good thing they moved away from using those type of chairs not too long afterwards to actual like steel chairs.
Yeah.
Instead of the folding chairs. And that brings us to the main event match. Ravishing Rick Rude, Ultimate Warrior, Steel Cage for the WWF Championship. Unlike 2 years, a year before, this one, to me, was not one of the best matches Warrior and Rude had against each other. For the 3rd year in a row, I felt like the main event kind of was a stinker, if you will. Warrior picks up the win, escaping the cage. But it just There was something off with the main event, or what matches were chosen as the main events, I guess, at that point in time for SummerSlams.
I always go down with saying this. SummerSlam main events, yes, like you, I agree with you with that part. Ultimate Warrior sucked as the World Wrestling Federation champion. Oh, we got colorful belts. You know, that one was purple. That one was purple. And then he changed it to white.
Right.
To me, hands down, and I'm going to say this, I'm going to say it right now on this show. Randy Savage should have been the World Wrestling Federation champion going into SummerSlam 90.
Yeah, I'd agree. My King should have been.
Or
he was probably the hottest heel at that point in time, really.
Most definitely. Or give it to Rick Rude, but we know why Rick was gone from the company after this. And he had a humdinger.
Not too long after, yeah.
He had a humdinger after this one. He became the WCW Halloween Havoc Phantom.
Yeah.
But I still think that Ultimate Warrior...
At least Rick was able to be a WWE champion.
Most definitely. I feel like Rick Rude or somebody else would have been the World Wrestling Federation champion. Ultimate Warrior couldn't handle the pressure of being the top guy.
I could see that. Yeah, I'd say him and Hogan had a really, really good match, I felt like, at WrestleMania 90, but where he won the title. But other than that, yeah, it's wasn't nothing all that memorable, his title reign otherwise.
I remember all his title reigns. When he won the title, he had matches against the Honky Tonk Man. He had matches against Earthquake. It was like it's the same old finish. You know, when he got something with Rick Rude, I was like, man, this is going to be good for SummerSlam. And then you get this bullshit. I mean, it was garbage. I mean, you could have gave the title to Bobby Heenan, and it would have made it better.
Of course, Hogan and Earthquake got even more time than the main event did.
And that's sad.
The longest match on the card was the 2 out of 3 falls match. But it's Hogan, so of course he did. That might have been part of why the match wasn't all that great, the main event, too, but who knows.
I'm going to do this, but it's the wrong fingers.
And we don't really need the fireworks.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. We'll move on from 1990. Had its spots, but I feel like out of those 3, I would say the 1989 edition of SummerSlam probably was still the best version of SummerSlam up to that point, anyway.
Most definitely.
And now we move on to 1991. And I know the one I didn't watch, I'm really probably going to go back and watch it later. We'll talk about after this one because there's so many things to talk about the 1992 SummerSlam that we'll get into in a few moments, but we'll get to that. First, we got the 1991 SummerSlam back in the Garden 20,000 for a match made in heaven, match made in hell.
You did good. I like the way you say the God.
Yes.
Yeah. All right.
Thank you. Coco Beware beat Kato in the opening dark match. We actually had 3 commentators on commentary there. They didn't show the commentators there, but Gorilla Monsoon was joined by Bobby the Brain Heenan and Rowdy Roddy Piper for this edition of SummerSlam. So Piper called back-to-back SummerSlams. We'd kick off the show. You got the Warlord and Power and Glory were already in the ring as you get the Dragon, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, just called the Dragon, though, for some reason, in his announcement. Coming out to the ring first, followed by the Texas Tornado, and, of course, their partner, the British Bulldog, in this six-man tag match. It was an okay six-man tag. At points, it was a little bit of a cluster again, but in the end, the Dragon was able to pick up the win with the splash on Roma, I believe was who it was. Not the best still at that point opening match, because I still feel like the Hart Foundation had a really great opening match against the Brainbusters 2 years prior. Probably was the best opening match to SummerSlam at that point in time, which I'm sure will change as we go further, but still was a decent match showcasing those six individuals. Anything you want to add to that six-man tag before I go into the next match, which is even better?
First of all, I was actually at that event with my mother and my grandmother because it was my grandmother's birthday. So we were actually at that match. We were actually at that event because we got tickets from Hogan and the Warrior. We got tickets from Hogan and the Warrior because every time my grandmother saw the Warrior, I said, they gave you tickets. She goes, oh, nice. I really do. I said, what do you want to do when you meet the Warrior? She said, I want to pinch his butt.
Alrighty.
Oh, and by the way,
She liked the way his butt, huh?
Kato, everybody don't know this, but it was Simon Diamond.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
I thought the opening match with the Dragon and the Bulldog and and Kerry Von Erich against Power and Glory. I mean, holy shit! If you look at '91 and you look at Hercules, Paul Diamond. I'm sorry, I meant Paul. I forgot the name, but I know it was something Diamond.
Yeah.
If you look at Hercules back in '91, that motherfucker
show a picture of him, but...
that motherfucker features changed.
Yeah, I can see that. He definitely wasn't quite the same as what he was before that.
No, I gotta say, good match, but very clunky.
Yeah, points it was. I agree. Then we move on from that. You get the Intercontinental Championship match as Mr. Perfect with the coach defends against Bret the Hitman Hart in what was a really, not too surprisingly, a really great technical match between those two guys. I would say start of this SummerSlam was definitely, that match at least, helped raise things for this SummerSlam after that first match. The thing I still don't get, though, at the end of it, when Bret has like the figure four on at first and transitions it into the sharpshooter, it still to me looked like Mr. Perfect just kept shaking his head no, even though the referee called for the bell saying he had submitted.
I watched it back. Yeah, I mean, there's a story behind that they had to stop the match because that's when Kurt Hennig hurt his back.
Huh, did not know that.
Yeah, that's when he started having back trouble.
Interesting side note there.
Yep, so he hurt his back when Bret did that move outside. He landed awkwardly on his back, and he had a herniated disc.
That could explain things then.
Yeah.
Explain how it ended when it did and how it did.
You know what? I might change
But again,
my
like
name.
I said, they had a really great match though.
Almost that hands down, two technical wrestlers showing their heart out. I gotta give it up to Brett and the late Kurt Hennig. Excellent, and they stole the show for the remainder of the night.
Yeah, I'd agree. We'll get into it more, but I still agree with that. Nice. That was one of the first times they actually showed Stu and Helen there too and talked to him. So parent. We'd go from that to you get the Bushwhackers with Andre the Giant in their corner going up against the Natural Disasters with Jimmy Hart in their corner. You go from a great match to a shit match, pretty much. Natural Disasters would pick up the win after the earthquake to Butch. They'd try to go after Andre after the match. Andre was walking around with a crutch at that point in time. The Legion of Doom would come out to make the save. Make sure the Natural Disasters didn't do no damage. And from there, we'd go into Virgil versus the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase, with Sherry for the $1 Million Championship. Originally, the match would end on a disqualification as Sherry would attack Virgil. However, the referee would restart the match, but Sherry would be ejected from ringside area, and if she came back out, then DiBiase would automatically lose the title, pretty much was the stipulation. These two had an okay match, leading to Virgil eventually picking up the victory, winning the $1 Million Championship. Of course, we all know that was Virgil's way of breaking out from being DiBiase's bodyguard / manservant, whatever you want to call him. He was working with Piper at the time. The biggest thing that ever happened for Virgil really in his career at that point, that period, actually.
Sadly, oh my God, I can't believe I'm going to say this. Sadly, that's true, and the worst time of his career was being Curly Joe of the West Texas Rednecks.
Oh my God, I forgot about that. Oh, that is great. In the late days of WCW. The later years.
Maybe I should.
All right, we'll move on from there, shall we?
Maybe I should start calling myself Bobby the Brain, Bobby Heenan, because I know a lot about this shit that I shouldn't.
Right. That's all good. All right. We move on from there to the jailhouse match as you get the Big Boss Man versus the Mountie with Jimmy Hart. You would think with it being called a jailhouse match that you'd see some weapons used, the nightsticks or anything like that. No. The stipulation for this match is whoever loses gets to go to the pokey, gets to go to jail for the night. Okay match that Jack Joe and, did I just say that? AKA the Mountie, and Big Boss Man had here. You see Boss Man get the win with the Boss Man Slam. I feel like the most interesting thing that came out of it, though, was seeing the different videos of the Mountie being booked and eventually thrown into the Slammer throughout the rest of the SummerSlam.
I'm gonna say this: you sure you wanted to go? You sure you wanted to go to jail in 1990 in New York? Oh.
I mean, I'm sure they had something else staged and he wasn't really in full jail, but still.
No, I know. Because back then, that's when Times Square was a little, hey. You know.
All right. From there, you get the Nasty Boys defending the WWF Tag Team titles against the Legion of Doom. It says Street Fight on there, but they just called it a no disqualification, no countout match. Pretty interesting tag match leading to the Legion of Doom picking up the win. Yeah, it says Street Fight.
When the hell was that?
7 minute 45 seconds.
I was there, and I didn't know that was even a street fight.
Yeah, like I said, it was announced as a no count out, no disqualification match, though.
Okay.
What the announcers called it. I
Hey,
mean, you wouldn't know it really watching the match because even watching it earlier, there wasn't a whole lot of weapons really used. So
no. Oh, okay.
it seemed like a pretty straightforward match. But anyway, the
Yeah.
Legion of Doom out of all that become tag team champions for the first time, I believe, in WWF.
Yes, that was the first time.
Yeah. Lead to bigger things later. We go from there and into a match where you get Greg the Hammer Valentine versus Erwin Eichster IRS. I thought these two had a pretty decent match towards the end of this SummerSlam here. I mean, IRS, of course, was a brand new gimmick for this man, as we all know him as, of course, Mike Rotunda. But he did that character very well, and I just felt like the match that these two put on was really good. Kind of a clinic at points. Wasn't something you necessarily seen very often back in WWF in those days. Two matches that were pretty technical on the show.
Most definitely, because this is the first time that I know that this is the first time that Greg the Hammer Valentine was a face.
Right. Yeah, because he was a face going into this match. He was a face for a little while at that point in time, but it was interesting to see these two go at it. IRS would eventually pick up the win after 7 minutes and 7 seconds. But again, like I said, it was a really good match that those two put on. Leading into the main event match, of course, the match made in hell. You get Warrior teaming up with the WWF champion Hulk Hogan against Sergeant Slaughter. The Iron Sheik, then known as Colonel Mustafa, and of course General Adnan, with Sid Justice as the special guest referee. Again, and I know we're probably sounding like broken records here. Wrong match, main event of the show, because this main event again was shit for the most part. Hogan eventually knocks the powder into the face of Slaughter, gets the leg drop, gets the 1, 2, 3, get opposed down with Hogan and Sid afterwards. But yeah, that's about it for that 3-on-2 handicap match.
And Sid with his goofy.
You got the callback to win.
And Sid with his goofy look going through the curtain.
Yeah, looking like Grim Reaper.
Yeah.
You get the little callback of Sheik putting Hogan in the camel clutch at one point in time during the match as well, that they brought out from '83 too. But yeah, that was that. Of course, you can't finish talking about SummerSlam 1991 without bringing up, of course, what ended the show, the match made in heaven, the wedding ceremony of Miss Elizabeth and the Macho Man Randy Savage. Probably the greatest wedding in wrestling history.
I should know. I had two ladies crying.
I bet it did.
And I'm just looking. I said, "You know they're married, right?" "No, they just got married today." I said, "Liz and Randy have been married since the 80s. This is just something to make money." I'm a 9-year-old telling my mother and my grandmother, it's a storyline. Get used to it.
It's sad. But yeah, they'd been married since 1987, I believe, is what I seen. So
yeah.
And this was towards the end of their actual real life marriage.
Yeah, like a year after.
I think so, something like that. All right. But this one, I feel like 1991 was kind of on the upward trajectory of better SummerSlams. like I said, you had the great match between Brett and Perfect. Had a really good match between IRS and Greg the Hammer Valentine. It still wasn't up there quite as what we've gotten used to as some of the great SummerSlams yet, but it still was leaning towards that way. Maybe we'll get into one of the greatest SummerSlams here in just a moment, though. Any last thoughts before we move on to that?
Yeah. To me, I always thought, watching this again back as an adult, I think the Bret Hart Perfect match should have been the main event.
I'd agree. Instead of being match number 2 on the card. All right. So then we'll move on. I'd personally say this is one of the greatest SummerSlams of all time, in my opinion. But maybe that's because of what happens at the end of it, but we'll get into that. London, England, Wembley Stadium. Host SummerSlam. I mean, it was recorded actually 2 days earlier. I've now seen. I didn't realize that. August 29th, aired August 31st. And you get Vince McMahon and Bobby the Brain Heenan on commentary for SummerSlam. 2 dark matches. Jim Duggan and the Bushwhackers beat the Mountie and the Nasty Boys, and then Papa Shango beat Tito Santana. Before we get into the main card, which starts off with Money Inc., Money Incorporated, the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase, and Erwin R. Shyster, IRS, with Jimmy Hart in their corner going up against the Legion of Doom, Hawk and Animal, with Paul Ellering finally in WWF as their manager at that point in time.
And you can't forget
the Legion of Doom pick up a win. It was a really lengthy match.
And you can't forget about
what? It went about who? Sorry, it cut out a little.
You can't forget about Rocco, the ventriloquist puppet.
Oh, yes, the dummy. Yeah. And of course, the Road Warriors would come down to the ring a specific way as well for that match.
Oh, with the motorcycles. I still to this day, I can't figure out how Hawk drove a motorcycle when he was on heavy cocaine.
Right? You wouldn't think you could, but Hawk managed to.
Yeah, oh, what a rush.
Right. When we go from that match, I don't even have it up here.
Right.
This will show it a little better. There's going to be an interesting new in there. Go from that match, you get Virgil versus Nails. First time really seeing Nails' name on there for SummerSlam anyways. Nails would pick up the win with the submission. Nails had a okay run. Got in there with some of the top guys, but this was definitely early on in his career, and as Nails anyway.
Oh, yeah. We all know what happened to Nails after the Vince McMahon trials. I would have loved to see the match that they were going to go with, Nails against The Undertaker. Man, I would have loved to see that, but Nails beat the crap out of Vince McMahon. So who knows if he didn't do that? I think I would have loved to see Nails and Taker go at it.
Right. It's hard to tell what would have happened. Move on from there. Like I said, Nails got the victory. You got Shawn Michaels, who had broken away from the Rockers at this point in time and had Sensational Sherry as his manager now. Going up against Rick Martel in which I'm sure was a really good match up until the end, a double count out after 8 minutes and 6 seconds. Like I said, I haven't rewatched this one. I can't remember for sure. I believe Rick Martel had pretty much gotten away from the model character at that point in time and was starting a bit of a babyface run, if I remember right, again. I don't think they had heel versus heel there. I could be wrong though. Like I said, it's been quite a while since I've watched that this SummerSlam.
Actually, he was a heel going into the match.
Was he still a heel?
Yeah, he was, and you know, let's give it up for Sensational Sherry. That woman took so many bumps in the entranceway. I mean, you got to give it up to Sensational Sherry. I mean, that girl took some bumps. I mean, the match was okay, but for her to take them bumps, you got to give it up to her.
Yeah, Sherry was good at taking bumps in a lot of different areas when it would call for it. So,
and here's another side note about this match.
All right,
technically,
we go from there.
Technically, this match was not even supposed to happen. Shawn was supposed to do another thing, but Vince changed the venue to England. We'll get into that at the end of the main event.
Okay. So moving on to the next match, you got the Beverly brothers, Bo and Blake Beverly, with the Genius as their manager, going up against the Natural Disasters for the tag team titles. By this point in time, Earthquake and Typhoon had turned babyface. The Beverly brothers were a newer tag team, but the Natural Disasters would walk out as still the tag team champions. I can imagine, like I said, it's been a long time since I've really watched 92 SummerSlam, but I can imagine this match was just kind of okay. Earthquake and Typhoon were bruisers more so than anything else and didn't necessarily put on the greatest of matches. 10.5 minutes, surprising. This match went.
You just thought I was going to say, so yeah, it was okay.
All right. And you got the Repo Man. Well, there's something you didn't forget. Going up against Crush, which Crush manages to win. This is, of course, after Crush is done with the Demolition thing, because Demolition was done, dead and gone pretty much by 92. This had been like the Kona version of Crush, I'd imagine, at that point in time.
Yes, it was.
Had to be the babyface. Crush gets the win with a pinfall victory over the Repo Man. Repo Man, who at one point in time seemed like he was going to be a bigger star than what he ended up being. The next match we'll get into a little bit, because you mentioned how you thought Randy Savage should have been WWF champion going into the 1990 SummerSlam. Well, here we are in 1992. WrestleMania that year, Savage won the WWF championship from Ric Flair, of course, as Flair was at the end of his time in WWF. Woo! And here in Wembley, you see the Macho Man defend the championship against the Ultimate Warrior. 28-minute match, and I'm going to have to rewatch that one, because that one had been really good between Warrior and Savage, because they seem to put on really good matches usually against each other. Of course, Warrior had beaten Savage a couple years prior at WrestleMania in a retirement match. Savage would get reinstated, all those facts out of the way. Savage would lose this match by count out to Warrior. Not a huge fan of count out, especially for title matches like this, but it is what it is.
You know, I agree with you. This match.
From there,
I agree with you. This match should have been a clean cut, and technically, the Ultimate Warrior was supposed to turn heel in this event. That's why they went with the count out finish. Warrior didn't want to turn heel.
Not surprising that he wouldn't want to, but maybe it would have been good for his character.
Yeah.
All right. So then we go in. You got Kamala with Harvey Whippleman and Kim Chi going up against The Undertaker with Paul Bearer. Pretty much a throwaway match by the looks, 3 minutes and 27 seconds that leads to a disqualification victory for The Undertaker. I remember the rivalry that him and Kamala had you can't forget this casket match, or the coffin match, I believe it was called at that point in time, that those two men had, and how afraid of the coffin Kamala was. But eventually he gets stuffed in one by the Undertaker, and
oh yeah, and right before this, Undertaker came in with that hearse.
oh yeah, I almost forgot about that. He did come in the hearse at SummerSlam. Really interesting. So that technically was the pre-main event, but yet they still had another match that didn't make the show. Apparently, it was a dark match. Tatanka beat the Berserker with Mr. Fuji. It apparently wasn't part of SummerSlam. They had it as a dark match, it shows. I don't know why they wouldn't have put that on the show, but okay.
Yeah.
Didn't want it to go any longer, I guess. Yeah. That leads us to the... I'm going to say this. People can argue with me all they want to, if they want to. But to me, that all led to the greatest main event in SummerSlam history. Even to this day, in my opinion. You got Bret the Hitman Hart defending his Intercontinental Championship against England's own, his brother-in-law, the British Bulldog, Davey Boy Smith. Again, like I said, the greatest match in SummerSlam history, the greatest main event, the greatest match, period.
I'm going to piggyback off you. Hell yeah. I mean, that was, if people don't doubt what we're saying, that match for the Intercontinental title was the greatest one of all time. I mean, you have brother-in-laws, you have two technical wrestlers that are like there. This match basically saved SummerSlam 92.
Oh yeah, I'd agree. This match was the match of SummerSlam 92. And
yeah.
All the other main events sucked before this from SummerSlam, but this one definitely did not.
I mean, look at the card. You didn't have Hogan. You didn't have Hogan. You didn't have Piper, because they were going away. They stood away from the company due to the steroid scandal. So a lot of the guys stepped up, and speaking in the Intercontinental title match, technically Vince had SummerSlam in Indianapolis that Shawn Michaels was going to win the Intercontinental title from Bret, but then he decided to have it in Wembley Stadium and went with the Bulldog.
Nice. Probably was a better call anyways.
Yes, most definitely.
Shawn's heel turn.
And look at Bret Hart's career after 1992. After this match, he went on to win the World Wrestling Federation Championship against Ric Flair in Saskatchewan.
Yep, he sure did. That Intercontinental title reign for Bret definitely was, it was over a year, or around a year. It definitely was a catapult to bigger things for the Hitman.
Most definitely.
I would even say I call that the greatest match in SummerSlam history. I think that's a huge testament to not just Bret, obviously to Bulldog as well, because I feel like personally, when you look at the Bulldog, two of his greatest matches, I feel like was this one with Bret, and then the other one would definitely be the finals of the European Championship tournament against Owen.
Damn, yeah. I mean,
that happened on a Monday Night Raw.
I do have to agree with you. His matches with his brother-in-laws, with Bret and Owen, still to this day, I think they're the best best matches that he had in his career. You maybe could put in, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, put in his matches against Shawn Michaels.
Yeah, he had some great matches with Shawn, but
Yeah.
I think in there as well against Shawn, but
yeah.
All right, we'll move on to 1993. We got 2 hours in almost, so we're gonna kind of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 shows to go here. I'm gonna try to breeze through for the most part on these, to make it so we're not going too long.
Okay, let's do this.
All right, so 1993 SummerSlam. These ones are kind of some other crappy SummerSlams. Fat Chance was the tagline for this. Somebody has to stop him. 23,954 strong in the Palace of Auburn Hills here in Auburn Hills, Michigan. We got Vince McMahon and Bobby the Brain Heenan on commentary. Apparently, they were on the radio as well. Radio WWF. Jim Ross and Gorilla Monsoon did commentary for that. Interesting side note. So through these real quick, if you want to. I'm going to go over the results real quick. You just tell me anything you want to after I go through that. Razor Ramon would pick up the win over Teddy DiBiase. Steiner Brothers would defeat the Heavenly Bodies with Jim Cornette to retain the tag team titles. Shawn Michaels with Diesel in his corner would defeat Mr. Perfect by countout to retain the Intercontinental title. IRS would beat the 1-2-3 Kid. Bret Hart got a disqualification victory over Doink the Clown, who had Jerry Lawler in his corner, before King would beat Bret by DQ. Bret did double duty back to back. Ludwig Borga would defeat Marty Jannetty by submission. Man, there's a name blast from the past. Undertaker with Paul Bearer would beat Giant Gonzalez with Harvey Whippleman in the first and only, I believe, Rest in Peace match. Tatanka and the Smoking Guns would defeat Bam Bam Bigelow and the Head Shrinkers, Samu and Fatu, with Luna Vachon and Afa in their corner. That's interesting. And of course, in the main event, the Total Package Lex Luger would defeat Yokozuna with Mr. Fuji and Jim Cornette by countout. Yoko was the WWF champion at that time. So yeah, that's a quick rundown of SummerSlam 93. Anything that really stuck out or needs mentioning from that show?
Yeah, SummerSlam 94.
I know, right? Luger had to wear a protective padding over his forearm because he had, of course, the metal plate in his forearm. That was used to knock out Yoko at the Royal Rumble. But yeah, like you said, there's not a lot really to discuss from any of those matches. They were there.
Yeah.
Put it that way.
Yeah. Yeah, like I said, this SummerSlam 94.
Good to see this. Moving along, shall we? Whoops, not 95, 94. SummerSlam 1994 was a much better SummerSlam than 1993. I remember it quite well. Chicago, Illinois, the United Center, 23,300 in attendance. Macho Man Randy Savage was the host. Vince McMahon and Jerry Lawler were the commentators. As you get Bam Bigelow and IRS defeating the Head Shrinkers by disqualification. Alundra Blaze, and this was the first time ever at SummerSlam, would defend the Women's Championship against Bull Nakano with Luna Vachon in her corner. Pretty good match between those women. Reza Ramon with Walter Payton, Chicago Bears native Walter Payton, of course, player, would defeat Intercontinental Champion Diesel with Shawn Michaels in his corner to win the title. Tatanka would defeat Lex Luger, and Jeff Jarrett would beat Mabel with Oscar in his corner. I'll go through those quick because none of those are huge, but the two matches left are definitely matches worth talking about a little bit here. You got brother versus brother first. Owen Hart, who had beaten his brother Bret in the opening contest of WrestleMania 10 that year, before Bret would go on to win the WWF Championship in the main event over Yokozuna. Owen would get his rematch with Bret, but not just a singles match. This would be a steel cage match between the two brothers for the WWF Championship. And I haven't watched this in a little while now, but I still remember it very vividly, this entire event. Seeing Brett and Owen have one of the greatest, in my opinion, steel cage matches that we have seen in WWF history. Seeing the family members in the crowd, Bulldog, Anvil kind of get involved as well. It just was a masterpiece really put together for the Hart family altogether. In the match between these two brothers.
Absolutely.
Of course, Brett would win, but it still was a good match.
I call that match a masterpiece. Right? They put on a clinic. I thought that match was good. I always felt like Brett and Owen worked really good together. You know, you're not going to take the title off of Brett now. So, yeah, we already know what happened down the road, which I still think is the weirdest thing of having Brett lose a title to a guy and then he loses it to another guy at Madison Square Garden. But that's another story.
Right. And before I go, I mean, we'll talk about the main event here real quick. There's something I'll add to it at the end. You get, of course, the disappearance of The Undertaker after this casket match between him and Yokozuna at Royal Rumble that year. We wouldn't see Undertaker till here. You get Liam Neeson, of course, involved in the whole looking for The Undertaker. We get the Underfaker, if you will. There's Zagosky. Hey, John. It's Paul Heyman. But anyways, you get the Underfaker, as some people would refer to him, against the Undertaker in the main event here of SummerSlam. A decent match between these two. The real Undertaker with Paul Bearer in his corner would eventually walk out with the victory. However, to me, I felt like this, you can agree or disagree with me here, but to me, I feel like Brett and Owen should have been the main event on this card.
I know, I actually agree with you. I got something for you.
I deserve that. But yeah, this was, again, a case where they just had the wrong main event on, and the championship match should have been last on the card.
No, I agree with you. That should have been the main event.
All right. We'll move on from that to 1995. Is there anything else you want to mention about 94 before I go on?
Nope, let's go to 95.
Now, this one I might kind of just run over quick too, because these years really, I mean, 94, like I said, was that two-match card for the most part, but the mid-90s was kind of the shitty years of WWF for the most part. So, 1995, SummerSlam, Face the Heat, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Civic Arena, 18,000 attendance. As we get Hakushi defeating Slater early on in his career, of course, later known as Triple H, beating Bob Holly. The Smoking Guns beat the Blue Brothers, and Eli Blue with Uncle Zebekiah. Barry Horowitz beat Skip with Sonny. Skip, of course, as we all know, Chris Candido. Bertha Faye with Harvey Whippleman would beat Alundra Blaze to win the WWF Women's Championship in a 4-minute match. Undertaker with Paul Bearer would beat Kahama with Ted DiBiase in a casket match. The Hitman, Bret Hart, would beat Isaac Yankem DDS by disqualification. Shawn Michaels and Razor Ramon, we'll get into this a little bit, but would have a ladder match for the Intercontinental Championship, which Shawn would win. And Diesel would beat King Mabel with Sir Mo to retain the WWF Championship in the main event. John says terrible arena. Yeah, it probably was. The only thing decent about this SummerSlam was the ladder match between Shawn and Razor. Call back to their WrestleMania 10 ladder match. It wasn't as good as WrestleMania 10's ladder match, but still, it was the match of this card.
Again, I agree with you with that. I felt like this match should have been the main event.
Yes. Yes, John, you're right. Kane on that show by disqualification. He was known as Isaac Yankum at that point in time.
Don't tell the secrets. He was a dentist.
Okay, yes, he was. All right. Yeah, Diesel was a decent champion, but to have him in there with Mabel, yeah, we're not even going to jump into that one. We've talked at length about how we felt about Mabel winning that King of the Ring, and his reign is what he did after that. So I don't you go there. Move on to 1996. What else did I got to say? Yes, now Isaac Yankum DDS is a mayor. So
What a
can't forget
career.
that. 1996 SummerSlam. Yes, opposite the track, Gund Arena in Cleveland, Ohio, 17,000 people there. You got Owen Hart with Clarence Mason beat Savio Vega by a referee stoppage. The Smoking Guns with Sonny would defeat the New Rockers, Marty Jannetty and Leif Cassidy. The Godwins with Hillbilly Jim and the Body Donnas in a four-way elimination match to retain the tag team titles. Psycho Sid would beat the British Bulldog with Clarence Mason. Goldust with Marlena would beat Wildman Mark Merrow with Sable. Jerry the King Lawler beat Jake the Snake Roberts in a match that shouldn't even had happened because Jake should not have been wrestling really at that point in time, in my opinion. Mankind would beat The Undertaker with Paul Bearer in a Boiler Room Brawl. We're going to talk about that one in a minute. Shawn Michaels with Jose Lothario would defeat Vader with Jim Cornette to retain the WWF Championship. The last two matches we've got to talk about.
Did I
The
see
Undertaker, Mankind, Boiler Room Brawl.
Did I see on the free-for-all
Go ahead.
Stone Cold Steve Austin beat Yokozuna?
Yes, he did.
Holy shit.
We're going to get into that too, John. Yeah, that is surprising that Austin and Yoko were on the pre-show. But anyway, like I said, we got to talk about the Boiler Room Brawl, then we got to talk about the main event here. The only two matches that really mattered on this card, personally, in my opinion. The Boiler Room Brawl, because going into it, it was Undertaker with Paul Bearer. Coming out, Paul Bearer, well, we'll get into that. Never seen a Boiler Room Brawl match before, but a really good first time ever match here between Mankind and Undertaker. Mick Foley with this Mankind character was amazing. But you can't take anything else away from this other than the fact of what happened at the end of the match. You win the match by going back to the ring because you start in the Boiler Room. Whoever gets the urn first from Paul Bearer is the one that wins the match. Undertaker got into the ring first. It looked like he does his pose as usual. Looked like he's going to win the match. He got the urn all right, though. But how did he get the urn, Eddie?
He got it right in between his head.
Right between the eyes.
Yeah.
Yes, Paul Bearer would turn on the Undertaker, smash the Undertaker with the urn, and leading to Mankind coming in there, getting the urn from Paul Bearer and winning the Boiler Brawl. The biggest turn of all time at the biggest out of nowhere turn, I guess you could say, at that time, because whoever would have thought Paul Bearer would turn on the Undertaker at that point?
I never thought it. I mean, I think WWE did it because a month before, Hulk Hogan formed the NWO.
Sure.
And they needed something to top that. Paul Bearer turning on the Undertaker,
Yeah.
was it okay? Yes. But Undertaker and Paul Bearer were like peanut butter and jelly. They should never broke that up.
I agree. They eventually find their way back together a couple times, but all right. So then, as I mentioned, we got to talk about this main event. I've said it before, probably on this podcast at points, and I'll say it again. Vader and Shawn had a really great match to close out this SummerSlam, but there's only one problem I have with that match. The wrong man walked out with the WWF Championship.
I totally agree with you. It should have been Vader time.
Yes.
And everybody knows this. Shawn Michaels made a big fuss about this because he felt like Vader messed up in that match. Vader was supposed to win at the Garden. Vader was supposed to win the World Wrestling Federation Championship at Survivor Series, but Shawn bitched to Vince, and that's why Sid went on to win the title, and it messed up everything. And
instead of Vader.
I felt, yeah, because look what the next pay-per-view was. It was supposed to be, it's time in your house.
Yeah. It's crazy. Yeah, definitely Vader should have been WWF champion, and that's when he should have won the WWF championship. It's a shame, a damn shame, that Vader was never the WWF champion. Just because of politics and Shawn Michaels.
Yep.
And don't get me wrong, I love Shawn Michaels. Yeah, but
still to this day, Shawn Michaels regrets that because he said he wasn't at a right state of mind. And I said, damn, if you weren't at your right state of mind, still think of the business. So, yeah, I still think Vader should have won the WWE, the World Wrestling Federation title at SummerSlam.
Yep, that's the only downfall. All right, now let's move on to 1997. We breeze through these kind of quickly here. Here we go to Continental Airlines Arena, East Rutherford, New Jersey again. The Rutherford Arena. Mankind beat Hunter Hearst Helmsley with China in a steel cage match by escaping the cage to kick off things. Goldust with Marlena would defeat Brian Pillman. Pillman would have to wear a dress per match stipulation. If he lost, he'd have to wear a dress. I don't remember seeing Brian Pillman in a dress, and I don't want to see it personally. Legion of Doom would beat the Godwins. The British Bulldog would defeat Ken Shamrock by disqualification to retain the European title. Had Bulldog lost the title, he would have to eat a can of dog food. Thank goodness that didn't happen. Los Boricuas, Jesus Castillo, Jose Estrada Jr., Miguel Perez Jr., and Savio Vega would defeat the DOA, Disciples of Apocalypse, 8-Ball, Chain, Skull, and Crush in an 8-man tag match. Stone Cold Steve Austin would beat Owen Hart to win the Intercontinental Championship. Had Austin lost, he would have had to kiss Owen's ass. There's more to talk about that match we'll get into. Main event, Bret the Hitman Hart defeated The Undertaker to win the WWF Championship with Shawn Michaels as a special guest referee. Again, we'll talk about those last two matches. Those are the main ones that matter here. Stone Cold and Owen Hart, everybody remembers when you talk about that match from SummerSlam 1997, the Tombstone pile driver that went awry. Owen dropped Austin on his neck and head. Austin would have to go on and have neck surgery after that and be out of action for many, many months. Terrible thing that happened for Austin. They had a really good match going up until the end of it right there with that. And Austin managed to barely pull out a roll up to get the 1, 2, 3 out of it after that. Tombstone. It was something, even if you watch back now, something horrifying to see the way Austin laid. He's lucky it didn't end his career.
Yeah, when you watch that match back and you see how Austin's head just went boom on the mat, you're like, holy shit, how is he still alive?
Right. I mean, I get it. It's not ballet by any means. This is wrestling, but still.
Yeah.
You got to give a little bit to both guys there, Austin and Owen. You can't give the blame to just Owen on it because the botch was on both of them really there. Thank God it wasn't any worse than what it was. Austin was able to get back in the ring and have the amazing run he did, but it's still tough to watch that. Beyond that, the main event match, Brett and Taker had a really good match, but I felt like it definitely wasn't their best match those two had against each other. This was just all leading, of course, to Survivor Series. We all know the Montreal Screwjob that would happen. Too much of the focus, I felt like, for this match between Taker and Brett was on Shawn being the referee. Shawn, of course, would cost Taker the match in the long run, even by accident, but still. It just didn't feel right, this match, in the long run.
Yeah, you have it heads on that it was basically Shawn's show. Basically, like I always said about that match. I mean, we got some good points out of that match. You know, Brett kept the belt into Survivor Series and then the Montreal Screwjob. We got the first ever and returning in October Bad Blood, you know, with the Hell in a Cell.
Yes.
And
right.
You got the formation of one of the greatest stables of all time, the Generation X.
Yes, great coming out of it eventually too. But
yeah.
This SummerSlam was okay. Just I wouldn't say was one of the best though.
Well, the one I liked
now,
about
as for the next year,
the one that I liked about it was Sonny was wearing that low cut outfit with the casket full of money.
Nice. Yeah, that would be good. I'm sure the still really good too between Mankind and Triple H to start off the show, but
yeah.
We don't need to talk too much about the rest of that show. So it was a good show, but still wasn't the best. We'll move on to 1998 SummerSlam here. I feel like was better. We'll go to why in a moment once it loads here. Highway to Hell. New York City, back in the Garden. The Garden. 21,588 people this time around. As you got JR and King on commentary. You've seen what the main event was there in the picture.
No, nothing.
3 matches on Heat beforehand. Wow. Too much over LOD 2000. That's terrible. Gangrel over Dustin Runnels, a.k.a. Gold Dust. And the DOA versus they're beating Bradshaw and Vader. Paul Ellering was their manager. I forgot Paul Ellering was the manager for the Disciples of Apocalypse at one point. Main show we go. D'Lo Brown beats Val Venus by DQ to retain the European Championship. The Oddities, Giant Silva, Golga, and Kurgan. Who could forget those guys? With Luna Vachon, Shaggy 2 Dope, and Violent J, a.k.a. ICP. Defeated Kai and Tai's Dick Togo, Men's Teo, Sho Funaki, and Taka Michinoku. A handicap match with Yamaguchi-san in their corner. Oh boy. Things we could talk about that one, but we're not going to. X-Pac with Howard Finkel beat Jeff Jarrett in a hair versus hair match. Edge in Sable would defeat Mark Marrow and Jacqueline in a mixed tag match. Ken Shamrock beat Owen Hart with Dan the Beast Severn in the Lion's Den match by submission. The New Age Outlaws beat Mankind in a 2-on-1 handicap Falls Count Anywhere match to win the tag team titles. Triple H with China beat The Rock with Henry in a ladder match for the WWF Intercontinental Championship. And in the main event, Stone Cold Steve Austin would beat The Undertaker to retain the WWF Championship. My opinion, Austin and Taker, it's not the greatest, but it's up there as one of the greatest matches in SummerSlam main event-wise history.
Oh my God,
I put it probably in the top 5.
I'm actually gonna disagree with you. It wasn't one. It wasn't one of Undertaker's best matches.
No, that was really good.
He looked really sluggish. He looked like he was not into it. I mean, the match was awesome. I mean, there was a lot of miscues. I don't see the Undertaker miss any miscues in the match. My match, and I know it's gonna sound weird. My match, hands down, for the greatest match, was Triple H and The Rock's ladder match for the Intercontinental title. I thought.
Yeah, they had that was.
No offense to Austin and Taker, but I still feel like Triple H and the Rock stole the show that night.
I could see that. Yeah, that was a really great match too. So
I mean, hell, I was at that event, so I know how it was.
Right. All right. That was just early on in Triple H and Rock's rivalry against each other too. So
Yep.
There's a couple other things that were good about that year's SummerSlam. I'd say it was a pretty good SummerSlam, actually, really. But
yeah,
let's move on to the last one for tonight to talk about. We might talk a little more about this one. We'll see. SummerSlam 1999. Last one in the 90s. 17,370 people filled in the Target Center in Minneapolis for an out-of-body experience. As we got Jeff Jarrett beating D'Lo Brown in a singles match for the Intercontinental and European Championships. He won both belts. The Acolytes won by last eliminating the Hollies, Mario Hardcore and Crash Holly, in a tag team turmoil match to become number 1 contenders for the tag titles. Al Snow would beat the Big Boss Man in a hardcore match to win the hardcore title. Ivory would beat Tori to retain the women's championship. Ken Shamrock would beat Steve Blackman in a Lion's Den match, weapons match. Test would beat Shane McMahon in a Greenwich street fight. Since Shane lost, he was forced to give his blessing to Stephanie and Test. Had Test lost, he and Stephanie would have been forced to break up and never see each other again. We'll get into that a little bit. The Unholy Alliance of the Big Show and The Undertaker with Paul Bearer would beat Kane and X-Pac to win the tag team titles. Rock would beat Billy Gunn in a Kiss My Ass match. Mr. Ass, as he was known then. Mankind would beat Stone Cold Steve Austin and Triple H with Chyna in a triple threat match to win the WWF Championship with Jesse the Body Ventura as the referee. 6 teams were in that tag team turmoil match that the APA would win. Edge and Christian, the New Brood, Mideon and Viscera, and Droz and Albert were in there as well. So I want to talk about Test and Shane McMahon. This was really one of the first times we'd see the Daredevil side, I guess you could call it, of Shane McMahon in WWF. Him and Test had a really good match. I feel like, anyways. And some of the things that Shane we would get accustomed to seeing do started with this match that he had with Test here. I believe he did a dive, or maybe he got knocked off of part of the scaffolding or something. I know he did something crazy in this match. Can't remember the exact thing that he did, but
the one that he got
maybe it was off the Tron.
The one that he got knocked off the scaffold was against Steve Blackman.
And Steve Blackman, yeah, I remember that. So I was trying to remember what exactly. I know he did a crazy spot in this match too against Test. I just can't remember the exact spot.
I don't remember. I think it was that he dove off the top rope and elbowed him from the announce table.
The announce table, that could have been it. I was thinking there was something bigger too, but maybe not. I know he had another big spot against Big Show too. So.
Oh yeah, and who could ever forget that night was the debut of the Mean Street Posse.
Yeah, that they did in the Greenwich Street Fight. This posse did debut. Rock and Billy's match is nothing really worth talking about. The main event, though, of 1999 SummerSlam it wasn't the first time, of course, for Mankind to be the champion, but it just felt like something special to have Mankind beat Stone Cold Steve Austin and Triple H in that match. I guess even sure as the referee.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I wish they would have kept the belt on a little more on Mick because, 24 hours later he lost it. But
right.
What happened after the match, holy shit. Triple H whooped that trick.
That's what you want to call it? Yes. I recall.
Yeah. He whooped
But
Stone
it definitely was, as you mentioned, it was Triple H.
Yeah, he whooped Stone Cold's ass so bad in that match. After everything.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other thing that I also like, and I don't know why I do, but the hardcore match with Boss Man and Al Snow, where the Road Dogg was on commentary.
Right. Yeah, they had a pretty good match. The hardcore matches really back then, I feel like, were put together really well. I mean, I really enjoyed it when Crash Holly was the hardcore champion and all the running around and the 24/7 stuff they did with it. But still, the hardcore matches at that point in time with the hardcore championship just felt different and special compared to what you saw the rest of the card for the most part during a show for WWE at the time.
Yeah. Like you were saying about Shane and Test, man, what we got after that in December blew the WWE up, and WCW went out of business.
Well, 2 years later, well, a little under 2 years later, WCW went out of business, but yeah. Year and a half later. The memories.
Yeah.
All right. So that's SummerSlam 88 through SummerSlam 99. I still feel like I said, SummerSlam 1992 had the greatest SummerSlam match of all time. Out of these shows, it's hard to really pick a specific SummerSlam that was probably the best one. I still feel like we had even better SummerSlams as we'll go further through these next two shows. But there was decent SummerSlams on there.
I got something to do. How about this? We pick our top 5 matches from 88 to 99. You pick your top 5 matches and see which ones you like. And we add what SummerSlam that was. I'm going to let you go first. What is your top 5?
Top 5 matches. Oh, boy. Now you're putting me on the spot because I look back and see what I had again. You already know number 1 because I already said that many times. That'd be Bulldog and Brett.
Okay, that's on what. I'll come off here and let you know which ones are mine. That number 1 is Brett Bulldog. That's my number 1. And that's your number 1.
Yeah. Now, I'm not necessarily going to say these are... Ooh. No, number 2, definitely easily. Steel cage match, Brett and Owen.
Same here.
That, of course, being 1995? 1994. Number 3... Guess I'd say from 98, probably the ladder match between Triple H and The Rock. I could pick Shawn and Razor's ladder match, but I feel like Triple H and Rock had an even better ladder match at SummerSlam.
Okay, so my number 3 is the one I went to in 1991. Brett versus Perfect for the Intercontinental title.
Yeah, I'd probably put that at number 4 for me.
Number 4, mine will be the ladder match between Rock and Triple H.
Okay.
And then my 5th one will be
number 5,
Shawn and Razor.
good pick. I think for number 5 for me would have to be, even though I didn't care for the finish of it, I'd still go probably with Warrior and Rick Rude for the Intercontinental Championship.
Really?
Yeah.
I would have picked, for me, I would have picked the one for the Intercontinental title between Warrior and Rude.
That's what I picked. That's what I said.
You said not you Intercontinental or the WWE Championship one?
Yeah, the Intercontinental.
Okay, good.
Intercontinental Championship match.
Oh, good. Thank God. I thought you said the one for the WWE title. I'm like, what the hell's wrong with you?
No.
Oh, thank God.
No.
Thank God. Thank God.
That was one of the worst.
So let's get this before we sign off. We're saying that Hulk Hogan matches are sucky.
At SummerSlam, definitely, yes.
Okay, good.
His matches sucked.
Yeah. Okay, good. So at least we got that straight in, and if nobody likes it, we got 2 words for you.
Yeah, fill in the blanks there. It's
Yeah.
not guns up either.
No. And it's not hose down.
Right. Or whole train. No.
Oh,
But with that being said, that pretty much will bring us toward the end of our SummerSlam retrospective part 1. A lot of memories to talk about there. We got through it. Next week, you and I got to discuss how we're going to do it again. I'd like to do Thursday again, but we'll see if they are available for that. It's just easier because Wednesdays, of course, Dynamite's on. But
yeah, I'm clear.
we don't want to do that.
Oh, wait. Next Thursday?
Right, we might do.
Ooh, I have a dentist appointment. And my mouth's going to be done.
Uh-oh. Well, we'll talk because I might be able to do it even earlier in the week than possibly, or a different time during the week. But we'll discuss that. I'll post it on social media a day or 2 before we go live, so people just keep an eye out for that. Of course, like I said, next week we'll do 2000 through 2011, I mean, and then we'll do 2012 through 2023 in 2 weeks. Yeah. So,
and ladies
be on the lookout for that. We're still,
ladies and gentlemen, before we sign off, we want to know at Tiger Talk Wrestling, what is your favorite top 5 SummerSlams? And we want to know your matches. What is your top 5 matches of any SummerSlam? We want to know what your best matches is, and leave it in the comments because we want to know every time, because this is something we do at Tiger Talk Wrestling. Make sure to leave a comment to let us know what your top 5 greatest matches of SummerSlam is all time.
Yeah, it'd be great to hear from people what their opinions are. You can list your top 5 favorite matches and maybe even your top 5 favorite SummerSlams and why.
Most definitely.
With that being said, we'll catch you guys next week as we're on the road to SummerSlam 2024, which we're hoping to do something special for the day of, but we'll get into more details on that later. We don't want to spoil things. For the final boss, Eddie, I am Tony. This has been Tiger Talks Wrestling Summer Retrospective Part 1. We will catch you guys